I got to be able to see.
Strategically position your
Action.
and rely.
Evening all.
Evening. It's Thursday again. I think I say that every week.
It's got to be payday this week, isn't it? 30th of July today.
Surely.
Stinking hot out there. Although I did speak to one of our customers up in York today, up in Harrogate, and it's chucking it down with rain up there.
This happens up north. We know that.
Very sorry for you poor people up in the north, but we are basking in 32 degrees down here, and my goodness, is it warm.
Certainly is. Wine required extra tilling today.
But we're all prepared. We're all prepared. Good evening, everybody. Hi.
Evening. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining. Today is the big boom Barossa Aussie evening, and meet the winemaker John Weeks, who'll be joining us very shortly.
Yeah.
Hi, Jane. And Felicity.
Yeah.
Give us all a wave. I hope you've had an opportunity to try and get a few canapes prepared. We thought it was a good opportunity to put the ball in others' courts. So I'll give you a flash of my...
Oh, wow, look at that.
Here we go. These are my...
it's all in the presentation.
Sourdough pesto crab cups.
Fresh crab from Weymouth.
Fresh from Dorset.
Now, yes, we have to sort of like
slightly
indulge. We have a fantastic customer down in Weymouth, the Yuli's campsite. They've been ordering off us. They're only open for 4 weeks of the year, and they open on Monday. If you want to get a booking, give it a go. You might be too late, but they're only open for 4 weeks a year. And for 4 weeks a year, they buy Hannibal Brown wines. So we have the terrible task of having to drive down to Weymouth in the blistering sunshine and deliver their wine to them and take the opportunity to buy some fresh crabs, which is what these are all about.
We'll tell you how lovely they are in a minute.
Award-winning canapes at this end, everybody.
So a quick welcome in case there's some new people watching today or, in fact, in the future. We are Hannibal Brown. My name's Jude.
And I'm Pam. And we've got silly hats on today.
We've got Aussie hats on, although apparently they're not very Aussie. It's just our British take on it. And Finn the dog, who does usually join, he's here, but he's flopped out on the floor. He's absolutely boiling.
Where is he?
He's down here.
Oh, poor chap. He'll come and say hello in a minute.
So he might pop up when a canapé comes out, but I think it's probably not allowed for dogs. But we'll see.
No.
Trial and error, eh?
So we're Hannibal Brown. We're still delivering up and down the country, across Europe, every day of the year almost.
Give or take.
And this evening we are going to be talking to Mr. John Weeks, who is just waking up as we speak. It's I don't know what time it is exactly, but it's some ridiculous o'clock.
Very early in the morning.
So he'll have his cup of coffee. It's tomorrow, yeah. He'll have his cup of coffee. But before we do that, actually, we just talk about Australia because we do talk about Australia from time to time, but we haven't really talked to you specifically about the Aussie regions.
Although we must have done at some point because we have got these hats and we couldn't even remember. So.
No. So the area that we're talking about this evening is South Australia. So the Barossa, which is the little orange patch to the sort of the west of the pointy bit. So you've got your big pink bit, which is South Australia, or New South Wales, I should think.
Really, yeah.
And directly across, you'll see Adelaide, I think. It's terribly small. And about, 85 miles or something from Adelaide, you find the Barossa Valley. Now, that's Barossa. How long's it been going?
Oh, well, you tell me. You are the Aussie.
About 180 years.
Oh, there you go.
180 years. And amazingly,
where you'll find this chappie.
A collaboration of Les Anglais and the Germans, who first pioneered and first settled over there. It was the English and the Germans that started the whole thing, the whole shebang. But I'm not going to say too much because I'm going to interrogate Mr. Weeks because he is the knowledge.
So pour yourself a glass of the lovely Clare Valley Riesling. I'll pour our glass, and I think without further ado, we should welcome in John.
Let's bring him in.
There we go.
Good morning.
Hi, John.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good evening.
Good morning. Can you hear us okay?
Yeah, absolutely fine.
Great.
10,000 miles away, wherever you may be, John.
Yeah, at 3:35 in the morning.
Well, thank you.
Well, we know that you got a lot of support here, just purely for getting out of bed. Actually, I'm not sure I would have done it, but
where are you right now, John?
Sorry?
Where are you right now?
I'm in my office at home at the moment.
Where's home?
Home is in Adelaide.
Okay, in the big smoke.
Yeah, just left to the pink bit on the map.
Yeah, the pink bit.
Above the pointy bit.
Yeah.
So come on, John, let's just talk just for people who maybe haven't read my blog, but John and I go back an awful long way.
Yes,
I can't remember how long we're actually, probably 15, 20 years or so in any case. But John was working as a flying winemaker, and
That's
maybe
right.
you can just describe exactly what that means, John, for some companies in the UK. So give us a little bit of background.
It started well when I first started winemaking. I was down in Coonawarra, which is probably a name known to a lot of people, and it was in the early 90s, and it was just when the so-called flying winemaker trend was just starting, working with UK supermarkets and bringing people from the southern hemispheres, mainly Australia and New Zealand, over into France, Spain, Italy, making wine sort of stylistically a bit more compatible for the UK palate. And so I went to the south of France in, I think, 92 was my first vintage, and sort of went for a year and sort of kept flying winemaking for about 30 years. It sort of got a little bit out of control. So, so I was going back and forth.
And I think for a lot of people who don't know this, of course, there's a huge amount of winemaking expertise in Europe, but they were equally crying out for impact from the Southern Hemisphere, particularly Australia. And as I just alluded to say, Australia has been making wine for a long time and has got an incredible history, particularly with Cabernet and Shiraz and Rieslings, and we'll go on to that in a second. But sort of like pulling on the expertise of the Australian flying winemakers was absolutely critical in the 90s. So that was what my recollection was.
Oh yeah, I mean it was more about fine tuning, and it was just utilizing technology that was there. Ironically, a lot of it's European technology, but it just wasn't always implemented, especially in places like the south of France, which was just known as a big wine lake, or in the south of Italy or wherever. So there was a lot of opportunity to use really good quality fruit, and just make it a little bit more fruit driven in style, and just sort of preserve those great characters. And sort of, the typical thing of Europe is that, it's more regional names rather than we use varietal identification. And so the emphasis is always for us is to highlight the variety rather than a regional aspect, I suppose. And that sort of came through a lot stronger in places where varieties were always just blended together, and you never really saw the sort of highlights of a lesser variety, for example.
Yeah, and Mum, in my days of working for the Foster's Group, everybody knows Foster's for the beer, the undrinkable beer that they don't even sell in Australia. But when I was working as a wine buyer for Foster's, Foster's, I think, were the second biggest wine vineyard owners in the world.
That's right.
They were huge, and they own brands such as Lindemans and Wolf Blass and Rosemount, and all those big names that you see in the supermarket shelves. And the one of the reasons I think you just said, John, was why Australia became so successful is because of the labeling. It just suddenly became more accessible, and you put a label on the back as well, and you told a story. Which is where France and Italy, a foreign language at that, really weren't providing that sort of accessibility. And so pretty much all wineries, all wines in Australia, I think, they've got their winery name on them, but closely followed by the grape variety.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. And I think, we've always, from an Australian perspective, we've always looked at regions like Bordeaux or Burgundy, and sort of put them on a pedestal. And so you need to separate yourself and give yourself your own identity, really.
Yeah.
And I think that, just through speaking with the fruit, that's the best way to do it.
Absolutely.
Well, really good point then, to move on to tell us a little bit about the Riesling that we're tasting.
Yeah, absolutely. And I have got a glass here, so don't worry.
Oh, good man. Cheers.
Thinking you're a bit of a lightweight.
Yeah. Don't worry about that. So the first one is the 2018 Dickinsonia Clare Valley Riesling. Australia's got a few areas that what we term as classic regional producers of Riesling. Eden Valley, always cooler climate ones, and Clare Valley are the two that really spring to mind when people start thinking about Riesling. It is Rhine Riesling, but of course we can't call it that, so it's just known as Riesling. So that if people sort of link it to that German origin, and sort of stylistically, it's 12% alcohol, so it's a little bit fuller than some of the European Rieslings that you find. But the emphasis on this is all about capturing fruit. So the Clare Valley is a very small region in Australian standards, but it's probably one of the most.
How big is it, John?
Sorry?
How big is it? The size of what?
The size. I don't know in terms of size in production, but it's sort of like I think it's about 4,000 ton of fruit. So it's.
But in terms of sort of geographical size, so that people can.
Geographically, I think we're sort of talking, less than, it's about 40 kilometres from tip to tip, and about maybe 10 kilometres wide.
Yeah.
So
not even Greater London.
It's quite patchy in terms of vineyards throughout that area. So it's sort of it's a small region, but it has it gets very cool nights and not really hot, not hot days, not certainly Australian hot. And so because you get that diurnal temperature, it's fantastic for Riesling, and it helps to retain its acidity.
Well, this is really lovely and fresh, and it kind of ticks all the boxes, but not something you would imagine. Well, a lot of people would imagine coming out of warm, sunny Australia.
No,
but again, you get cooler climates there, so you can't really generalize so much, right?
Yeah. Go on.
Sorry.
Go for it.
Yeah, I was going to say, the emphasis that, because Australia is pretty diverse. It's very hard to put a blanket over everything and say, this is one style, because it varies from region to region. So
hence the Australian Chardonnay issue, which is now being pushed aside, I think, these days.
And I think actually, kind of, did people want to know this? Did Barossa and Clare Valley, did it have any? Did it struggle with any of the adverse weather conditions earlier in the year?
The bushfires.
Well, yeah.
In terms of not so much the bushfires, that was more the Adelaide Hills really copped it with the bushfires, so that's quite close. But the Barossa and Clare were pretty much spared from bushfires. But some of the other places, the Hunter Valley was completely devastated with smoke taint, and King Valley and places like that. So, but the bigger problem we've been having in the last few years has been drought. That's been the big one for Australia, and because when you have drought, you also have a lot of frost because you don't have much moisture around. So frosts have also been an issue, which affects the yields quite significantly.
That's interesting. It's interesting, isn't it? Everybody thinks that Australia was on fire for months on end, and there's
and big chunks were. It was absolutely amazing.
Yeah. John just said, for the people who are listening or watching, John just mentioned smoke taint, and smoke taint is a terrible thing if you've got bushfires. I've experienced it in South Africa and obviously in Australia. If smoke taints the fruit, there's no real going back, is there? You just get
it's sort of like I guess remember in the old days when you could smoke in pubs and you'd come home and your clothes stunk of smoke, and that's sort of what happens to the grapes, and certainly after veraison, and once they get some color in the skins and a little bit riper, it gets even worse. And there really is. It's like, licking an ashtray or burnt rubber or something.
Lovely.
Yeah, no, it is. It's really
maybe
nice.
it'll become a thing, sort of Aussie fume wines, a bit like Greek's Retsina, like it'll just catch on and be a thing that you specialise in.
I guess you just don't understand the style with smoke tank. But no, there's really not a lot. There's a few things you can do, but at the end of the day, it really does devastate the fruit quality. So we were very lucky this year that in our regions that we didn't cop it.
So just on the Riesling front, so everybody who's watching, if you go on the Hannibal Brown website and you just search Riesling, we've got an awful lot of Rieslings, and it must be something to do with we rather like them.
But yes, it's all about what we like, really, at the end of the day. Which is
but they are all very, very individual, and the reason why we tapped on John's wine here, the Flinders, is because some of the Rieslings can be really, really kind of quite aggressive and boo, 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 and quite sort of adult. Whereas this Riesling for me, or for us, we kind of thought, ooh, isn't this nice and accessible? It's lovely and really soft. And I don't know, John, could you just describe it a little bit more?
Yeah, again, like I say, we sort of definitely concentrate on fruit character. So it's a couple of vineyard selections, which is really important. You spend a lot of time doing fruit selection in the vineyards. But the idea with this sort of thing is that you've got to balance the acidity with that fruit richness is what we're looking for. So you sort of end up with those sort of really nice lime, sort of citrus peel characters in the beginning. We use a very neutral wine yeast, which is quite important because, again, we're just not trying to look to emphasize with other sort of yeasty sort of characters like you would with Chardonnays and things like that. And there's obviously no oak or anything like that, so it's just a pure fruit expression. And the other great thing about Riesling is that it ages so well. And the styles go from that sort of limey citrus peel into those marmalade, sort of more complex characters, and it still drinks so well. So if you have an underlining spine of acidity, if you like, it just carries the fruit through. So yeah, in terms of winemaking, it's a very simple process. It's like I said, it's the vineyard selection is the most important thing, and the picking time, clean fruit. And then, a straightforward stainless steel fermentation, and then bottled fairly early to retain those sort of fresh characters.
Yeah.
Well, it's certainly done the job, and there's definitely a place in our Riesling range for it. Yeah. I know one wine which a number of people have commented on already, that they've been holding out for the red, because I know we've got a lot of lovers of quite big, bold red wines. And I wonder whether we should skip on to that before we mention your book and ask you about a couple of stories there.
Let's go for it. So, but anybody who is interested in the Riesling, it's on the website. It's called Flinders Dixonian.
Dickinsonia.
Dickinsonia. Sorry, just what have I said? Charles Dickens.
No, it's got nothing to do with Dickens. It's
no, I know it hasn't. It's more about
one of the things, just very quickly on these wine labels, is that they everything that we've sort of focused has been very much South Australia on our wines, and there's some fossils that have been discovered in South Australia, which are basically the origin of life. And it's called an Ediacaran fossils. There's stuff in the British Museum, and it's an incredibly interesting aspect. I think I sort of missed a calling to be a paleontologist now that I've started to sort of looking at some of this stuff. But it's,
having read your tasting notes on the back labels, you've definitely got a call for it.
Yeah. But it's all about, dirt and vines and dirt and fossils. It's it links together really well.
True.
So the wine is there. It's available. We only have a limited stock at the moment. It's $14.75, which I actually think is a billy bargain.
Yeah, really good value.
And I think, as John said, actually, it's drinking really nicely now. But actually, don't be afraid to put it away and just forget about it for a year or two and see how it develops. Because it will. Patience. Yeah. It will. And older wines, as we know, are always better. Right then,
Here we go.
moving swiftly on to the big beast.
Let's just pour this. I'll just
finish that and say. So, John, my big question that I asked you the other day, in actual fact, I want you to describe exactly why it is that Barossa Cabernet and Shiraz, for that matter, has this very distinctive characteristic which you've got in this wine.
It's a simple question. We'll just unpack terroir in about 3 minutes. The real thing that defines the Barossa Valley is that, in fact, the irony is it's not a true valley. It's it has a range on one side, and the other side opens up into a plain area. But the Barossa Valley is it's a lower altitude. It's less than 500 meters generally, and it's more of a continental climate as opposed. So there's a good idea. That's looking from the southern end up, and then on the right-hand side of that map is where it goes into east. So there's a line that goes through the middle there, and that's basically the Barossa Ranges. So on the left-hand side of the map, you've got what is called Barossa Valley. And then on the other side, you've got the Eden Valley, Eden Ranges. And when you blend those two together, it becomes Barossa. So that's the geographical indication overall. So the Barossa Valley is a lot, it's lower altitude, quite alluvial soils. But I think that the real emphasis on it is because of that continental climate. Places like Clare Valley are much closer to the ocean, and so they get more of a maritime sort of climate and cooler nights, whereas we in the Barossa we get more of a continual baking, I suppose, which gives the higher alcohol sort of quality to the fruit. And a lot of Australia's original plantings were thought about with fortified in production. So you wanted high alcohol, big, rich wines. So that's why there is so much Shiraz, Grenache planted in Australia, is because it was originally planted for fortified. And then as people start, as tastes change and realistically, it's sort of within my winemaking career, it's sort of gone from that to more refined varieties. So things like Cabernet. Cabernet's been around for a long time, but there's a lot more. I don't know how many varieties. There'd probably be 40 or 50 varieties planted in the Barossa now, as opposed to back in in the day when it was just a couple. But
just to interrupt there, actually, John, because it's kind of really important in Australia's history, really, that come the First World War, when all the Australian soldiers were being sent off to fight with basically fortified wine, which was home production, but all of it, almost all of wine that was being produced in Australia at that time was fortified. So it was, it was think port style and sherry style. We're talking about like 18, 19, 20%, maybe even higher alcohols. This was incredibly intensely high alcohol fortified wine.
Fighting juice.
Yeah. And I did read, and I do remember from my days at Foster's that the likes of Dr. Penfolds, we've all heard of him, and Dr. Lindemann, and they were actually encouraging this behavior because there's nothing better than getting a soldier tanked up to get him to shoot the enemy. But it's true that actually the Barossa Valley, just the Barossa Valley in the whole of Australia, was representing 25% of total wine production.
Yeah, and I mean now it's obviously less because there's a lot more. I think it's around 13, 14% at the moment.
Yeah, it's still quite high though.
Yeah. But in terms of the sort of global recognition, it is definitely in the top couple of regions that international people know and reckon. And again, it comes down to that style. Where we've taken a European variety and made it our own, really. So Shiraz, also Cabernet, but also Shiraz Cabernet blends or Cabernet Shiraz blends are very, very quintessential Australian.
So here's a question that we put to sort of each of the winemakers actually that we've spoken to in these events, and it's just a really interesting from a consumer's perspective to find out what's going on. Of the sort of 40-50 grape varieties that are growing there now, because the Australians are really quite forward thinking in bringing new, more unusual grape varieties over and giving them a go, aren't they? I mean, I remember we had an Aussie pick pool not that long ago, and all sorts. So is there any really unusual or surprising varietals that are starting to make tracks?
I think we've gone through this phase of sort of Rhone varietals, and then it's gone more into Spanish varietals and Italian at the moment. So things like Tempranillo are doing really well. I think that's really quite exciting. But then there's another one, from south of Italy.
Southern Italy.
Nero d'Avola. That I think has a real, and so with climate change now, and it is getting hotter and hotter all the time, we have to be really aware of that. And it's also, as well as sort of introducing new varieties, it's what you've got and working with that in those sort of more extreme heat conditions, because you can't just change your vineyard every year. So you need to sort of understand that totally to be able to do that. And when we do get certain vintages where you get 2 weeks of 45 degrees plus, you've got to know what to do with your fruit and how to manage your vineyard.
And what do you do? I mean, in a nutshell, obviously winemaking is not that simple, but
no, but if you've got water, you're sort of totally blessed. But with some of these older vineyards, they don't have the water, so it's a matter of canopy management and trying to protect the fruit from the sun, basically, allowing fruit to not burn but get to ripeness, and then so that you can at 12%, these grapes aren't ripe, so you do need to get up to 14 or 15%, but you need to do that gradually so that your sugar levels just don't scream up, and then all your tannins are green. So it's really, and that something like this, we work really hard with it to work on the tannins. And you say these are big wines, and they're full, but they're very smooth as well. It's really well balanced. And I've always, with all my winemaking, it's always been, if it's not together at the beginning in a really young wine, it's not going to come together in 5 years' time.
No.
So you just need everything to be to capitulate together at the beginning, and then you're onto a good thing.
So sorry, go on.
Well, I was just going to say, there's a question here from Luke. Now, I seem to remember that Luke might be a lawyer, so this might be a very lawyer kind of a question, but I'm going to put it to you anyway, and if it doesn't make sense, we'll move on. But his question is, does the Australian IP office provide good support with the geographical indication for Barossa, or is it more communal or collective?
Blimey.
No. The geographical indication is incredibly strong here, and yes, well protected as well. So and Wine Australia has worked very hard on that as well. So totally protected. Some people do sort of try and stretch it a little bit, but no, it's and we have really good auditing systems here as well. If anyone tries anything dodgy, it's
picked up on pretty quick.
You're going to get caught. So it's you've got to be very true to label, and I think and also it's funny because a lot of these things you can work out with pure taste as well. So if you had something that was a sort of a thin, weedy wine, and you were sort of had it on the label as one region, a lot of people would pick that up very quickly just from the taste, let alone and then investigate what the story is.
A few of our viewers here have mentioned that over the last sort of half hour that they think their red is just improving and improving. So I mean, obviously this is a this is a wine that has got a lifetime ahead of it to
absolutely. I mean, it's a 5-year-old wine. I've got my glass here, but I opened my bottle yesterday and had it with dinner, and it works so much better. It's sort of, it's like food. When you make food, it tastes better the next day, and it's very much the same with the wine. But these sort of, I highly recommend to sort of, if you're going to have a dinner party and have the wine, you just pour it out and then pour it back into the bottle.
Exactly.
And that works really well. But yeah, things do open up very quickly. And again, there's sort of those sort of fruit characters, and what we're looking for are still in the wine, and it's not that really heavy jammy sort of character. And it is a little bit unusual to run as a premium wine with Cabernet Sauvignon and not Shiraz from the Barossa. But again, I think, as I was saying, with warmer climates, we can deal quite well with Cabernet, and it's sort of structurally with the tannins, it helps us out quite a lot.
So if we're going to, take half a dozen bottles of your ARB and stick them, under the bed for a few years, how many years do you think could be optimum?
Yeah, well, I mean, we've been working with this vineyard for it's about a 40-year-old vineyard, but we've been working with it for about 20 years, and the wines from 20 years ago are still drinking really, really well.
Yeah, amazing.
Wowza.
Don't
hold on to it for too long, because we really need you to buy this, actually.
Well, as I always say with wines, I mean, if you can afford to buy 6 bottles straight up, and then you sort of drink one every 3 months or so, 3 months,
exactly,
or 6 months like that, and then when you're really enjoying it, drink them all, and maybe keep one to see how it goes. But you don't want to have your wines go too far. These are not going to sort of go over the edge, but you don't want to come back to a wine 3 years later and go, oh, it's not quite like how I remember. Well,
tragedy. Really.
See, John, for anybody who's not listening, who wasn't here at the beginning, we're talking to John Weeks. He's called in at 3:30 a.m. from his home in Adelaide in Australia. Thank you very much, John. That's why he is in his pajamas. I think you're in your pajamas. Anyway,
quite an expensive surf hoodie.
And we're talking about the ARB Cabernet Sauvignon and the Flinders Range Riesling.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I just question for you, John. It's we're sitting here in 32-degree heat. It's incredibly warm today, and it's going to be the hottest day of the year tomorrow. What is the optimum? Do you have an optimum temperature for drinking this red wine?
Yeah, I would say sort of between 10 to 15 degrees.
Okay, which is considerably cooler, everybody, than your ambient temperature at the moment.
Than your current room temperature is what a lot of people go on. So there's certainly nothing wrong with putting a wine like this in the fridge for, half an hour before you're serving it, and then just let it slowly come up to temperature.
Okay. No ice cubes, though. No ice cubes in your wine.
No, very naughty.
No Coca-Cola either. So.
Exactly.
Okay. So we've just to say, actually, ARB Cabernet 2015 vintage. It's good for the next 10, 20 years, according to Mr. Weeks, the winemaker. It's on our website at £20.25. It's not the cheapest wine, but in actual fact, for what you're getting, we actually think this is incredibly good value.
It's fantastic.
And I hope everybody's realizing, actually, this is something very different to what we have been. We sell. We don't sell a lot of wines like this.
There's a definite gap in our range which doesn't cover the wines which are quite this big and bold.
Yeah.
But it's certainly a fantastic wine to fill that gap. So.
And what will be a nice comparison, because just to let everybody know, next Thursday at 7 o'clock we have the winemaker from Casas del Bosque in Chile joining us. And we will be talking about his Cabernet Sauvignon. So the two of them, really interesting comparison in actual fact. So we may well talk about the actually, I don't know, John, question for you. What do you think about Chilean cabs compared to Barossa cabs?
I personally love Chilean wines, Cabernets. I think I really think Chile still is on quite an experimental stage at the moment, because even though they've got a long history, they're starting to do a lot more plantings in the smaller valleys. and so they're developing their flavors quite quickly, but they're still working them out. But the Chilean wines are certainly incredibly drinkable. That's the beauty of them. You sort of, you threw a Chilean cab by, halfway through entree, really, and it just goes down so smoothly. So yeah, they're beautiful, beautiful styles, and
slightly controversial, but kind of quite dear to the majority of people who are listening to this. Any thoughts on the English wine movement?
I could go down one route, but I won't. No. Look, I'm a huge advocate of what's happening in England, and I think the wine industry is, it's small, but it's so vibrant, and the styles, and it's just freshness, and it's really, really good to see. No, I think especially sparkling wines are just totally fantastic. I just think they're adorable. So yeah, it's a good thing, and I think they've got a huge future. I really do.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
We had Gary and Kathy Jordan of the Jordan Wine Estate in Stellenbosch join us a few weeks ago, and of course they are planting in Kent at the moment, which should come on stream in a few years' time.
Couple of years, I think. Yeah. Have you had the phone call from any UK, wineries or potential wineries saying, come and help us make Aussie style wines in
Sussex? There's a couple of guys over there who are doing, over in the UK, who are doing, Warren Shack and people like that who are doing some really, really good things. But no, the old flying winemaking has sort of got a bit clipped at the moment.
I know, what are you going to do?
Well, could that be something to do with, I've got bad light, but your book? With quite a nice opportunity to talk about. So
nice
Flying Winemaker is grounded. Yeah. So he wrote a book.
Yeah. That's pretty much it, actually. Yeah. So that's I've worked in about 30 countries around the world.
Wow.
And the background with this sort of book was one day in a wine fair in Germany, in Dusseldorf. It was just a load of mates sitting around talking a lot of rubbish, as you do. And it was incredibly funny. So I thought, well, there's no such thing as a humorous wine book, really. You don't find too many. And so basically what I've done is I've taken 20 countries from around the world and written a couple of stories or anecdotes that I've personally been involved in, so I know they're sort of half true anyway. And it's basically just a bit of a laugh where you can sort of pick the book up, read a couple of things, and then sort of put it down again.
Brilliant. Well, I'm really looking forward to reading it. Actually, we've not had them long enough to probably got into, but actually we are running a little bit of a competition this evening. For our regular watchers, who we said, right, we should really put one of John's books up for grabs. So we've got them to, based on your food type suggestions for pairing with the wines, their own canapé recipes and post photos of the canapés. But when I last checked before hurriedly getting ready for this, people were hurriedly getting their canapés ready. So that the pictures will be on Facebook. So we'll have to, we'll give you a nudge so you can see what people came up with.
Yeah, so everyone who's actually gone into the competition, it's not too late. We know that a few people have sort of said, can we have a little bit more time? So we are going to look at these canapés tomorrow. So you've got this evening to finish them off and put the finer tones on them.
Or like John, it will be big Barossa Cabernet and canapés for breakfast.
Well, that's right. Yeah, a bit of Cabernet and kangaroo and mushrooms.
Yeah, nothing wrong with that.
That would have been my canapé, as a sort of like a portobello mushroom with some kangaroo mince, and then a sort of a nice sort of tangy cheese on top, and sort of baked that way.
Okay.
That sort of
I've never eaten kangaroo. In fact, when I did spend a year in Australia, but I was vegetarian at the time, so so I went nowhere near any of the exotic meats. But what is kangaroo? Is it kind of gamey, or?
No, it's not too gamey. It is more sort of beef textural, but incredibly lean. There's no cholesterol in things like kangaroo or emu meats. So yeah, it's something that you just sort of flash fry it and cook it really, really quickly, and it's sort of it's a little bit gamier than beef. But it's certainly not over the top or
I love it. It's very, very calorific, but you just dollop a bit of cheese on top and then you got a meal.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's my kind of snack.
Cholesterol addition.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But I mean, you can get kangaroo, I think, in the UK still in the supermarket.
Yeah, I think there are a few kind of like rare meat companies knocking about that we've seen at food festivals where we've taken.
It works really, really well with a plum sauce.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, you heard it here first, everybody. Go and buy your kangaroo.
That'll be next week's canapé.
And get your plum sauce out of the kitchen cupboard. John, thank you so much for joining us and breaking your sleep habits. Really appreciate it. So just a recap for everybody. These are the Flinders Range Riesling 2018 and the ARB Cabernet Sauvignon from the Barossa Valley. Definitely give them a go.
In the world's biggest bottle.
In the world's biggest.
It's a pretty solid bottle, isn't it? It's 950 gram bottle. So it's
bottle, that is.
It's a big Cabernet bottle.
Do give them a go. Don't leave it too long because we only have a limited quantity of these wines at the moment. Mm-hmm. We may well try and get some more in, but for now, it's not a huge quantity. So don't delay if you like it.
Snap it up.
Johnny, thanks a lot. Nice to hear from you again.
Lovely to see you.
Be in touch. Cheers. Cheers. Neck that before you go back to sleep.
Yeah. No worries.
All right. Cheers, John. Bye. Bye.
There you go.
What a legend.
Kind of impressive, actually. A couple of glasses of wine in the middle of the night.
I'm sure we've all done it, haven't we? That's not just me. He'll have a nice lion now, I reckon. Yeah.
So actually, I think, just going back. So Thursday next week, we are doing Casas del Bosque from Casablanca in Chile with the winemaker from there. Mm-hmm. And we are going to be talking about his Cabernet Sauvignon, and it is going to be interesting to compare the two.
Well, we were sort of going to be doing the Carmenere and Syrah.
Oh, well, we'll talk about the Cabernet.
It's available on the website as well. In fact, if I reach over here is the very remains of a bottle of the Cabernet. Oh no, that's Carmenere. We don't know what we're talking about anymore. We're going to be talking about the Carmenere and Syrah, but actually any bottle of Casas del Bosque wine will go down perfectly with listening to the winemaker, because that is a winery who we really have been banging the drum about for 8 years really, and who have won Chilean Winery of the Year a couple of times. So they are. One to look out for. Absolutely. Still and always.
And something that I am about to do this week is I took inspiration from the Clare Valley Riesling. We've got a lot of Rieslings, and as we were talking about with John, they are all so different. So what we're going to do is we're going to pack them all together and create a little box of Riesling. Yeah. So all of you Riesling lovers out there, or even all you non-Riesling lovers, give it a go. It's one of the most intriguing grape varieties ever.
Well, I thought you were going to say this week I'm going to try all of our Rieslings and give me a fresh look on them. But no, they're all fantastic and they're all very different. So we hope you like the wines.
Yeah.
A couple of other things we need to just talk about. One of them, because this week we've had quite a lot of interest in our other side of our business, which is our label design service.
Oh, yeah.
So
here we go.
I think people coming out of lockdown are starting to think, what can we do to cheer those people up who are really just sick to death of it?
So here he is. He's not the real thing. He's lying under the table because he's too hot. There he is. What a beauty. Personalize your own label. This is the other side of our business, and it's a lovely, lovely gift idea. Very, very unique. So we take your photos. So you send us a photo, any message that you want, and we'll design it to the wine of your choice. So you choose the wine, send us a photo, any message. Bob's your uncle. Mm-hmm. We do it for a lot for businesses. In actual fact, before the whole sort of the virus hit us. This is where this whole thing was going, a lot more towards corporates, because companies love shouting about their branding. So if you've got a company out there who's interested in actually promoting themselves in a fun and entertaining way, and how more entertaining can it be than with wine?
Indeed,
then put us in touch with them, because we'd love to hear from them. And
equally, if you just want to cheer someone up, then we can do single bottles and put a smile on someone's face
with a bottle of thin special.
Yeah, shut it up to cup, as that one actually is.
That's it.
Yeah, so thank you again, everyone, for joining us. And another big, salute to John getting up in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
We hope you love the wines. We can't wait to look at all of the canapé photos.
Get finishing your canapes, everybody.
Keep an eye out for the Riesling mix case. She said it now, so it's got to be done.
Yeah, it will be. It will be. And it's a wrap. It's a wrap.
So see you next Thursday.
Remember, it's hot out there. Put the sunscreen on.
Keep hydrated. Okay, bye.
See you later, everybody.
Cheers. Bye.
Bye.